Today on the Vinyl Guide, we are thrilled to have with us heavy metal drumming legend Vinny Appice. How you doing today, Vinny?
I'm doing great. How are you?
Oh
Nice to
man,
talk to you, Nate.
hey, great to hear from you too as well, Vinny. Before we start talking records and music and all this stuff, your brother is Carmine Appice, two incredible, legendary drummers out of the same family. How noisy was that house growing up?
Well, first of all, he's Carmine Appice.
Oh, okay.
He pronounces the name wrong.
Okay.
And the reason why I say that is because my father said Appice, and Carmine used to say Appice, and then when he played with Rod Stewart, Rod pronounced it Appice, and he changed it to Appice. We have a battle all the time of how to pronounce the name. So growing up in family house, it wasn't what you think because I'm 11 years younger than Carmine. So he was kind of playing with the bands, local bands, and this is in Brooklyn, New York, and I was really young. I was like 7 years old,
Hmm.
and Carmine would rehearse with the band in the house. And they weren't very loud really, but there were always drums in the house, and then I got to watch rehearsals and stuff. So that's what gave me the fire and the inspiration to start playing because I saw all this as a kid and I loved it. So he was out of the house, and then I started banging away, and then we did replace two ceilings in the basement, but that's okay.
So he left a drum set around, an old drum kit that you eventually picked up. Is that how it worked?
Yeah, he had it was an old Gretsch kit. I think he got a couple of pieces at a time, when he was really young, and it was a Gretsch Red Sparkle kit. Great kit. I wish we had it now. I kind of destroyed it, I think. And then he added to it, and that's the kit I believe he used for the Vanilla Fudge when they first started until he went over to Ludwig drums. So that kit was always in the house, and I would start playing on it and banging on it, and then I started getting serious, and Carmine heard me play, and he told my parents, well, you should send him to drum lessons to the same guy that he went to
Hmm.
because he's good. And Carmine would show me things when he came off the road, and I'd pick up on that quickly. So eventually I went for drum lessons at age 10 for 3 years and learned how to read and drum music and went through all the books. That's how I got real serious about it.
So he was out of the house, but he was, of course, counseling a bit. Are there any other Appice or Appice brothers that? Uh,
Not well. There is another older brother, but he doesn't play drums, luckily. But there were some cousins in the family. There was probably another three or four drummers, and one of them was Frank Appice, and then he didn't. His parents weren't as supportive as our parents. They wanted something to fall back on.
hmm.
And so they never really got a chance to really make it, because they were doing other things, trying to fall back on, and those are the best years to try to get things going in a career. So,
Sure. They didn't become hearing doctors by chance, did they?
well, I wish they did because me and Carmine would both be there all the time.
Uh, so,
Huh?
so he left you a drum kit. I assume that Carmine also left you a stack of records to listen to you and form the young Vinny brain.
Well, he listened to stuff which was really cool, like a lot of soul stuff, James Brown, and a lot of things like that were around the house. Jimmy, what was the name? Keyboardist. I can't
Jimmy
think of his
Smith.
name. Jimmy what?
Jimmy Smith.
Yeah, stuff like that. Which wasn't rock and roll, but it was like, wow, this stuff is cool. So he left records like that around, and then there was some old jazz records, Dave Brubeck. There was some Buddy Rich. So it was a wide variety of stuff other than rock. And then some Beatles and things like that.
Hmm.
So I listened to that too, which was great because all the feel. There's so much feel in the James Brown stuff. It's just incredible.
So it sounds like you gravitated a lot in the early days to James Brown, to some of the funk, to some of the jazz. What do you remember or recall a few of the records that you really had heavy rotation in your house?
Um, well, there was Rich. There was an album called Rich versus Roach, and Buddy Rich, and I think it was Max Roach.
Hmm.
And that was played a lot in the house, and then which was cool because there was two drummers on it, and there was music, and they both played, and there was a couple of little drum breaks that were great. So things like that, and then a little later on was more of the Beatles stuff, and Rolling Stones, Let It Bleed, and things like that, And then when I got older, I just started, getting into different bands.
Hmm.
And then, but he did a long time ago. This was probably in the late '60s. He came back from England or something, and he gave me the first Led Zeppelin album. He said, "Hey, check this album out. It's pretty good." He said it's a good drummer on it, great drummer on it, John Bonham. I said, "Okay." So I listened to that one. Wow, I think I had it before anybody else had it.
Wow.
I think it wasn't released here yet. And then the Zeppelin wound up opening for the Vanilla Fudge on a lot of tour dates. So yeah, it
Wow.
was pretty cool. And I got to see that. I went to one of the shows because my parents were always going to our shows. They were very supportive and really liked to see us play. So we went and somewhere in New Jersey, and Led Zeppelin came on. They opened the show, and then the Fudge came on, and both bands were insane. It was killer because they were young and on fire. So that was pretty amazing seeing Zepp for the first time.
How many times have you seen Zepp in your life?
Probably twice. That's it.
Hmm.
you know.
Did you spend the whole show just staring at John Bonham's right foot?
Well, I remember we were in the audience. I think we were kind of on stage left, so it was you couldn't really see his foot, but just watching the whole band it was just incredible. And it was so tight. It's awesome.
So you started moving to different small bands. This is still in New York, and then you formed a band that started getting some attention and started doing some recordings. Is that Bomf? Is that how I pronounce
Right.
it? Okay. What was Bomf? What did that stand for, by the way?
Band of Mother
Ah, okay.
Flockers, because we were trying to think of a name. It was just stupid names being thrown out. It used to be Community Apple because we were eating that apple up on the record plant, up on the roof. We go up there and smoke pot and stuff, and just crazy stuff. So finally, we just needed a name, and that's what came up. I don't know who thought of that one. But the way that happened is my friend, a good friend, Angelo Arcuri, played bass, and he lived down the street. And we hooked up, and then we started jamming together. And then he knew the guitar player, Joey Dambra, who is the brother of Louis Dambra from an album called Sir Lord Baltimore,
Mm.
that was released. I don't know if you're familiar with that. They were like a big band in New York, and they got a record deal, and they had an album, so it was a big deal.
Hmm.
So Joey knew Joey Dambra, the guitar player, in the band we put together. It was he knew Jimmy Iovine, from Interscope and
Hmm.
Beats Audio. And this was Jimmy. Jimmy was producing people at the record plant studios in New York City. He was doing Stevie Nicks, Fleetwood Mac. He was Bruce Springsteen, John Lennon, all. And so Jimmy had connections with and was a good friend of Jimmy. So we put this band together, and then we had four horn players and a singer. So it was like a 9-piece band, and it was a good band. And Jimmy brought us into the record plant studios to do some demos. He produced them, and they came out great. And the owner of the record plant studios loved the band, signed us to a management agreement, and he gave us a room upstairs on the 10th floor of the record plant studios to rehearse. And this is in Manhattan, so to get a free room in Manhattan
Oh,
is
jeez.
incredible.
Yeah.
You know, So we'd go there every night. You
Upstairs
know,
from Jimmy Iovine and the whole record plant
Jimmy
facilities.
Jimmy was downstairs working with John Lennon, and we were upstairs playing. We met a lot of people there. We met Aerosmith, a Giles band, Bruce Springsteen. Bruce was doing the first album. He used to get off the train, or he parked in the lot and walked down the street with his guitar on his back. He's just an unknown, you know. So it's just incredible seeing all this. Now here he is, going in and making this major album, but you wouldn't know that at the time. So we were around a lot of people there, and Rick Derringer recorded there. So then one night, Jimmy called us and said, "Hey, can you guys come down and do hand claps?" We said, "Sure," because that's what we did back then. You did real hand claps, you know. So there were 9 of us, so it was a good way to do it in one take. Go down to the studio, and it's John Lennon's in there. We go, "Oh my God," freaking out. I was like 16, you know,
Jeez.
and I'm like freaking out. So we did hand claps on a song called "Whatever Gets You Through the Night," and so we did that, and then we left. We went upstairs, and John probably asked, "Well, who are those guys?" And Jimmy told him, "Well, I'm producing them. They're up in the 10th floor or whatever." I don't know exactly what he told them, but a couple of days later, John walked in, watched us rehearse, and he loved the band, you know. And then he started hanging out with us. We played pool with him, did all sorts of hanging with him, you know. So it was really cool. And then he asked us eventually to do some videos with him, and then we did a live show at the New York Hilton, real black tie affair that was televised worldwide, and we did some crazy stuff there. But I just found out a couple of years ago that that was his last gig ever. So it's like,
Wow.
wow, you know, who would have ever thought? I would have never thought, you know, had any tie to the Beatles, no less John Lennon, and I would play his last live gig, you know. So it's crazy, you know, insane. And I'm still going to school the next day, high school. So a lot of times I wouldn't be paying attention. I'd be banging on the desk thinking, shit, man, I just played with John Lennon last night. And then the teacher would try to teach and she'd go, "Excuse me, wait, who's tapping? Vincent, you know, stop that drumming." And I would stand up and say, "Excuse me, did anybody else in here play with one of the Beatles last night?" And then I left. I knew, like, okay, I know what to do. So it was very hard to concentrate in that situation when you're thinking about, wow, last night we did this and we're going to record. And plus, we were recording with Jimmy.
Why do you have to know about Pythagoras?
Yeah, exactly. You know, and it was easy for me too after, because I told my parents, "I'm going to quit school. I'm just going to play," and they were supportive of that because Carmine had success at that point with the Vanilla Fudge.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, he had gold records. They're playing big places, and it was very successful. So they knew they knew this could be very successful. So they were cool with letting me quit school and then go full time into drums. You know, that made it easier.
So your graduation was from Bomf, Band of Mothers,
Yeah,
to starting to play with Rick Derringer's band. And you were
right.
with Rick for, what, 3 albums? Is that right?
Yeah, yes. And one more thing, going back to John Lennon's story, I heard just a couple of years ago from some big journalist in New York. He said, "Yeah, John loved your band, and he was grooming you guys to possibly be his next band because he wanted to get away from what he was doing with the same people he played with, you know. So that's why he was so intent on hanging out with us and and everything." So I thought, wow, that's a compliment, you know. That would have been amazing.
Wow.
And then in that same studio, that's where Rick Derringer was recording.
Mm.
So I think, was walking down the hall and heard Jimmy mixing our stuff and went in, said hello to Jimmy, and said, "Who's that?" And told him who it was. "Who's on drums?" "Vinny, Carmine's brother." "Oh." And then I met him there, and Rick said, "Hey, I heard you play. I like the stuff. I'm putting a band together. Give me your number. In about 6 months, I'll be putting a new band together." So that's how I met Rick and got involved with Rick.
Wow. Okay. By the way, is any of that Bomf music available?
No, it's not. And I do have tapes of it, like reel to reels, and I've been putting it on the computer. So I'm maybe check into possibly putting a couple of tunes out because it was really cool stuff. And I actually listened to myself playing. I go, man, that was pretty good at 16. I was listening and playing tight with the band and, cool fills and things like that. So,
What kind of music? 'Cause you're so associated with heavy metal, but the way you describe it, there's a horn section. I almost think War, kind of one of those type of bands in my head. What kind of
yeah,
music
well,
was
like,
Bonf?
like Blood, Sweat, and Tears, Cool and the Gang stuff, but more rock with the horns in it.
Mm.
And, uh, and Joey Damber was the guitar player was really heavy into, James Brown and Cool and the Gang and, a lot of soul music. And I started listening to that, and I went, wow, this is cool. That's why I'm a rock drummer, but there's a lot of feel to it because there's a groove that needs to be happening in all the songs. And it's not just a straight up rock beat. There's a groove in it. And you listen to those albums, you listen to James Brown stuff and Cool and the Gang and Earth, Wind and Fire. You go, man, that's groove on that, and the bass and drums is awesome. So I really focused in on that, and that helped my playing a lot, listening to that stuff. Then I got into heaviest. Well, I was listening to Hendrix and the band called Blue Fear, and I had my rock going for sure. I used to play. Here's a funny thing: I had a turntable. When I was real young, I used to play the stuff on 16, so it'd be big, heavy, whatever you're listening to. So I was like, yeah, that's cool. It sounded like Black Sabbath, actually. Yeah.
Yeah, well, not only could you get to slow down and have that doomy feel, but you could also hear all the different intricacies of what the drummer was doing, so you could learn from them as well.
Yeah. And it just sounded heavier, twice as heavy. It was slow.
Did you listen to any Black Sabbath back in the day?
Um, Not really until I went over to my friend's house and he had the first album. He goes, check this out. And I listened to it. I went, wow, that's really different. It's kind of spooky. And I listened to it and I really loved it. I didn't buy any of the records, but I loved it. But I was into John Bonham's drum sound, which is a more ambient, big drum sound. And then when I heard Sabbath, I went, wow, listen how dry those drums are. And that didn't at that time appeal to me. But Bill played great stuff, but it wasn't the style I was really listening to. Bonham really influenced me, and Carmine influenced me, and those drums sounds were bigger and loud and more ambient, and so I didn't really become a huge Sabbath fan. I loved the album, and it was totally different.
Hmm.
And I thought it was very scary at the time, and then Ozzy's vocals. It was totally different.
So when the call from Black Sabbath came in, now apparently Bill Ward did the Heaven and Hell album, but he couldn't finish the tour. So when
Right.
when the phone call came in for you, first off, how did they find you, and how did they know that you were the guy to give the gig to?
Well, the funny thing is, right before that, a month or two before this call from Sabbath, I got a call from Sharon Osbourne, and she was putting Ozzy's first band together. And she asked me if I wanted to go to England to play with Ozzy. And I was like 19 years old or something, 20 years old. It's like, wow, Ozzy, he's pretty nuts, isn't he? So I asked my brother, I said, yeah, I got this offer. It's Ozzy. What do you think? And now at that point, he was out of Sabbath and he was really, partying. And
He was not a rising stock.
no, you would think like this guy's going to wind up, not doing anything. I mean, at that time, who knew? And Sharon came along and straightened it all out, but I didn't know that was going to happen. So I asked Carmine, and Carmine said, "Oh yeah, he's pretty nuts, And because he hung out with Ozzy for a few times, and so he told me that, and I thought, well, I don't know. I don't even know where England is. I didn't learn that in school. That's when I left.
Right before geography class, that's when you left.
So anyway, so the Aussie call came in from Sharon, and then I didn't do it. I decided, I don't know, I was too young. I didn't know how to make decisions.
Hmm.
And then a couple months later, Sabbath called, and they were in L.A., and they said, we heard about you, I think through Warner Brothers Records or something, and they heard about me, and they checked out an album I did with a band called Axis, which was Af Derringer. And Andy Johns produced that, so it was a good rock album, good drum sound. So they listened to that and they liked it. And they called me and they said, look, we're in town for like 5 days. You want to come meet Tony Iommi at the hotel? We're looking for a drummer. I said, sure. So I went down to the hotel and met the tour manager. Then Tony came walking in with the Axis album. And he said, this is good. This is good. Yeah, yeah. We got along great. We were both, uh, kind of practical jokers and making jokes and stuff. So we got along really good. Tony invited me down the next day to SIR Studios on Sunset Boulevard in LA. And I went down. That's the first time I met Ronnie and Geezer and keyboardist Jeff Nichols. And then they said, okay, you want to play Neon Nights? Well, what song you want to play? And I heard Neon Nights on the radio a couple of weeks before, and I didn't know the song, but I knew the tempo was. And they played Neon Nights, so we played it, and so they said, "No, good, good." And then we started working a little bit. Then the band went to the pub. They were so happy they found a drummer, so we didn't rehearse very much, and that happened a number of days. And then on the last day of rehearsal, everybody started getting nervous that we didn't really rehearse enough, So first gig was in Hawaii, 30,000 people, Aloha Stadium. And I was nervous, I'm the nervous one. So I wrote a book out with some cheat sheets on it and stuff, notebook with all different things, put that on the side of me. We'd go do the gig. Halfway through, it starts raining. The book gets wet. It's all useless. Now we're just winging it, But we got through it. And I signed the book and threw it out in the audience. So some lucky fellow or gal's got it. I should have kept it.
Yeah, a book with all smeared notes and
funny ink. Yeah, Iron Man, intro, guitar and bass drumming, and it's all smeared.
Well, so suffice to say, the second show was better. The third show, that tour went well. When was the first time you recorded with Sabbath?
First time was we were on that Heaven and Hell tour for a couple of months now, probably 3 months. So we were tight, and we were getting along great. And then Warner Brothers called up and said, we have a movie we want you guys to do a song for. And that movie was the animated heavy metal movie. Mm. So they agreed to do it, and we had a couple of days off. So we went into Ringo's house, which used to be owned, and this is in England, by John Lennon. It's the house where John filmed Imagine, with all the white piano in the white room. And Ringo owns it now. So they said, all right, we're going to go there, and we're going to write a song and record it. So it's a big mansion. The drums were in the downstairs hall with steps going up, all wood. The drums sounded great. So we went in and checked in, and they gave out keys, and I got John's room, which is weird. I had the only connection to him. But I didn't stay there because he was just murdered, and I'm like...
Yeah, this is around 81, right? This is...
Yeah.
Okay.
So I didn't want to stay in the room. I should have stayed in the room, but I didn't. But I got another room. But we all hung out in that house, and it was incredible. As you open the closet, and all these gold records and Beatles stuff was in there. Everybody was going, wow, look at this. Part of rock history, Mm-hmm. So we wrote and recorded Mob Rules there, and that's a different version than that's on our album because we re-recorded it when we did our album, The Mob Rules. So that was the first recording, which was great because it came out really well and everybody was happy with it, and that everybody was at ease knowing that, wow, this sounds great with Vinny. We can go in and do an album. We don't have to worry about what's it going to sound like. So that was a great intro to all of us recording together. So that was the first recording.
So you did Mob Rules, toured on that, and recorded Live Evil.
Yeah.
And then at some point, you and Ronnie decided to part from the rest of the Black Sabbath camp. What was that decision like?
Well, yeah, things were getting bad between Ronnie and Tony and Geezer. It wasn't the same toward the Live Evil recordings and stuff. And then Ronnie sat down with me and said, listen, I'm going to put a band together, and I'm going to do an album. Actually, he said, I'm going to do an album. Because originally, Ronnie had a record deal, and he was going to do an album with all his friends. One of his good friends was Carrie Livgren from Kansas, and all his friends he wanted to play with. And he was going to do an album. That was going to be a solo album. But since he's breaking up with Sabbath, he decided to put his own band together. So he said, I'm going to do my own band. Do you want to I'd like you to be in it. It's up to you, I went, okay, because he lives in California and we got along great. We're both Italian and we both eat the same foods. And this is just amazing how much we had in common. And so I said, sure. And he asked me, I remember the day. It was at the Rainbow Bar and Grill in Hollywood. And we sat there and he said, I'm going to do it. I said, count me in. So me and him decided, well, he was leaving anyway. So I went with him and the band kind of broke up. And then we went on our way putting Dio together.
So before we get into the Dio years, just I guess a quick side note: you have a history of coming in and replacing drummers, sometimes at the last minute, and sometimes you're replaced. Like for instance, you replaced Bill Ward for Black Sabbath. Bev Bevan from ELO replaced. He stepped into the drum kit. What is that exchange like with other drummers when one takes another one's former gig?
Well, when I joined Black Sabbath, they were so established and known and they had a sound that I had to go in and kind of recreate that sound and vibe. But yet it's me playing because Bill Ward was a unique player where he played like really cool percussion parts almost in these songs. He always said he was a percussionist, not a drummer. That's what he always told me. And so Bill was a hard guy to copy, and because I'm not that kind of drummer as Bill. We're actually different. Bill got a different drum sound, and just approached it differently. So I had to learn what he was doing and try to incorporate that, keep those vital parts in the songs. So that was a challenge. As far as Bevan coming in after me, he's a different kind of drummer than I am. I'm probably more technical than Bev, but he had to. I don't know what songs they played that we did. I don't know if they played any because Ronnie was singing on those songs. So I would imagine it's the same challenge for him to go, okay, Vinny played these parts. And there's some parts in some of the songs that the drums are important,
Mm-hmm.
and same with Bill. So it's a challenge to go in and recreate. It depends what band you're trying to recreate in,
You have to dissect the songs and try to determine what drum parts are so unique and necessary to this song that you have to recreate it, and then decide what other parts would you personally have the freedom to express yourself in your own voice.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what happened. I would play the vital parts that I heard in the song, and then I would expand on certain other parts and be me. And Tony was cool with it, and Geezer was cool with it. Sometimes Tony told me, "Can you not do that fill in there?" Because I would do some crazy stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I go, "Sure, Tone, no problem." The next night I would do it more just to have a laugh, And then I would calm down, and I wouldn't do it. So we got along like that. It was really cool. And they never, whatever, I'm always open. So if they said something like that, I took it seriously. I said, sure, okay, I'll fix that, But it was very rare that anybody said anything in the band. So I assumed they were cool with the parts I played. And then after a while, they got used to my playing, and it was different than Bill's. So they got used to playing with me, and it didn't become much of an issue with different parts in there.
That's interesting because it's so limited of a community that's played with those sort of, historic rock bands like Tony and Dio and those guys. You're almost like an astronaut. There's only a handful of people that have been there, experienced it, and that you could talk to about it. What was it like recording with Tony? Did he bring the songs and the riffs already made, the songs already made, or was it more of a collaborative effort? Hey, here's a piece here, here's a piece there, and then you strung them together as a band.
Well, Tony always has a million riffs, and they're all great. I mean, he just plugs in and tests his guitar, and see, Tony's a different kind of guitar player. A lot of guys now, you hear them plug in, and they'll start playing fast leads and Tony played chords. He played a lot of chords when he would test his guitar or his amps. Played big ass doomy chords and put them together, and you go, wow, what a riff. Then go into some solos here and there, but he was more of a big chord player, and that's important. That's like, a lot of new guys are just worried about their leads.
Hmm.
But Tony, the master of riffs. And so a lot of time, I don't exactly remember how we wrote Mob Rules, but we put it together in that house in England. Then when we came to do our album, we went into rehearsal and we just jammed a lot. Tony had riffs and we jammed. Never come in with a whole song, and nobody came in with a whole song. It was a lot of jamming, and then I wound up being the guy to record everything. I had a cassette recorder at that time. We put up a couple of mics, and anytime we hit on a good riff or something anybody was playing that was good, I recorded it. Then we listened to it. Then we decided what we wanted to work on, and that went on for years. All the albums I did with Sabbath, that's the way we worked. And except The Devil You Know, the last album. And all the Dio albums was the same thing. I was in charge of recording everything that I thought was cool. And then we took it from there. And that's what I did also on the Last in Line album we just released with Vivian Campbell. I'm always recording stuff. And actually, we just got off a tour of Europe with the Last in Line, and Viv would just be playing in the dressing room some great stuff. So on the phone, I used a voice recorder, and I got 6 or 7 riffs that way. I just sent them to him because he's like a guitar player. He sits down and plays. You go, man, what is that? That's cool. He goes, I don't know. I'm just playing. That means he doesn't know, and probably most guys forget what they played off the cuff. So I recorded it. Boom. So we got it. So that's how we put all those albums together.
It sounds like there's a storm of riffs just floating around, and you grab a few of them, but for every
Yeah,
one you grab, there's a dozen that got away that still would have been
exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, like even when we're jamming as a band and Holy Diver album, we jammed and jammed and jammed. You could listen to maybe a 3 or 4 minute jam and go, yeah, that's cool. And then all of a sudden, one part sticks out that's magic. You go, whoa, what is that? And that's the part you take and start building a song around or putting it in the song. And, the rest of them were okay, but then there's a magic moment where all of a sudden it all gelled and that sounds like a song. So that's the way we did it.
So with the Dio band, particularly in the first couple albums, Holy Diver and The Last in Line, those are full of magic moments. While you guys were recording them, did you know you were on to something strong? Did you think that they would be legendary albums?
Well, Holy Diver was funny because, we once we got the band together with Vivian and Jimmy Bain, we went into Sound City Rehearsal Studios, which is right across the parking lot from Sound City. And we used to tear the place up. I mean, we'd destroy the place. They had pinball games in there. We'd open them up so we couldn't lose the ball, put things in there that candy machines destroyed, and they let us do anything. We'd lock people in rooms, and we did crazy shit in there. So we were just having a great time. It was like every night at 7 o'clock, we went there. It was like the boys club, we'd have a ball, we'd smoke a lot of pot, and those guys drank. I didn't really drink. So we'd just have a good time. And then we writing and jamming. We knew the band was fucking good. And then we'd record it. Then when we had 4 songs, we took all the gear, set up, all of us, Ronnie included, and brought it across the parking lot and into the Sound City studio. And then we recorded it. And Angelo Arcuri, who was my friend from way back, was the engineer because he wound up doing sound for Sabbath. I got him into doing sound. And then we'd record it. And then once we did 4 songs, we'd do some overdubs and stuff. We thought, this is sounding pretty damn good. Then we brought all that stuff back across the parking lot into the rehearsal room, and we wrote some more for another month until we had 4 more songs. Then we did the same thing. And then, I was finishing the album. I remember sitting there, those days we used to stay there till 3 a.m, And I remember hearing it going, man, this sounds pretty damn good. And then my roadie said, yeah, this is going to be platinum. I went, nah, I don't know about that, but we'll be happy if we sell a couple of 100,000 of these, And who knew that would be a cornerstone album in rock? It still sells. It's still bands that are new bands come up and they were influenced by that album, and all the things I hear. People coming up, going, man, I love that album. What'd you play on that? And that influenced us and kept me inspired. And So it was amazing. We didn't know we were making a great album. We were just having a good time.
Now it's interesting. Dio, as a band, it took a bit of a risky but effective move when you kind of played the angle of evil. You had the Beast. I think you guys called him Murray. You had the
Murray.
you had the angle of the Beast whipping a priest. You had all sorts of things. I mean, what was the discussion like in the band? You knew you were stirring up some controversy.
Yeah, well, the funny thing was we just came out of Black Sabbath, and back then, like Black Sabbath, we'd be on tour. We had a gig on Easter Sunday in Phoenix, and then it became like people protesting that Black Sabbath was playing on Easter Sunday. There'd be people out in the venue protesting and blah, blah. So we had to move the gig to the Monday, so it was like this known as such an evil band.
How dare you make a living?
Yeah. So it was one of those. So we came out of Sabbath, and we Ronnie was known as the singer from Black Sabbath, and these guys were evil and blah, blah, blah. So the cover of the album was, I don't know how they came up with that, if Ronnie had a lot of input on what he wanted, but the artists and Warner Brothers came up with that cover, and it was brilliant. I guess because the Holy Diver inspired him to come up with that cover. So, and then just for fun, I said to Ryan, I said, hey, man, let's put some backwards stuff on the album so people really freak out. They think they think that Sabbath, if you play the album backwards, the house will blow up or something, spirits will come in. And there was never anything backwards on the albums that we did. And then Live Evil spelled backwards is whatever, it's the same thing. And then it's supposed to be Dio, the logo, when you turn it upside down, spells evil. So we purposely put some backwards stuff in there. And Shame in the Night, there's a thing at the end where Ronnie goes, crucify the diver, but it's backwards, And so we purposely did that, and nobody mentioned it ever. It was like, okay, here we're giving you guys something to fight on, and nobody bit. And there's two spots in there. Actually, one of them was another part. I think it was in that song, or we're playing and we were recording, and Carmine came in, and my back was facing the window in the studio, and I think Ronnie said, "Look behind you." I went, "Ooh, that sounds weird. That sounds evil," And I looked, it was Carmine. Then later on, I said, let's put that on the album too. And we put that on there. And I look behind you. I think it's backwards. So just crazy stuff, but nobody even heard it. All this thing, they make a big deal about the bands being devil worshippers or whatever, evil. And, we never were. And then we go put stuff on and nobody hears it. So
they're playing the wrong parts of the records backwards.
Yeah. And that was turntables, easy to play backwards,
So playing with Dio for many years, and then you have side projects. You even went back to Black Sabbath, I think, for Dehumanizer.
Right.
And so it's kind of this. Your career is around all these different musicians, these different bands, these different releases. In more recent years, as you were doing the touring with Dio, you discovered he was sick. How did that affect the touring band?
Well, we didn't know he was sick, and we just, on the last tour, which was 2009, we would stand, Tony, Ronnie, and I would stand behind Tony's amps while the intro tape was playing, before we go on. And at that point, I was killing my shoulders from playing up in the air with all these drums. And I had a major, giant drum set. And which I wound up having to get shoulder surgery. So Tony had like a problem with his hands, tendons and stuff. Mm-hmm. I don't know, but we'd all be standing
Everyone's
there.
aging.
Yeah, and Ronnie obviously didn't know, but he had stomach cancer. So before we went on, I'm going, man, my shoulder's killing me. And Ronnie go, man, stomach, I think I got gas. And Tony would be going, my hand's a little weird, We'd all be complaining there. Then all of a sudden, boom, we hit the stage like nothing. Everybody's just wailing. So Ronnie sang just incredible,
Mm-hmm.
as as good as he sang in the day, and more energy, jumping off the drum riser. I mean, stuff. I'm like, damn, I wouldn't even do that, and I'm younger than him. And so we didn't know he was sick, but he just sang his heart out. And he would talk to Tony and tell him, yeah, my stomach, I'm not feeling good, and once in a while me. And we just thought it was something, with his stomach or some sort of not eating. He wasn't a great eater, so that didn't help either. He didn't like to eat vegetables and things like that. He ate a lot of the same stuff, and a lot of times he didn't eat. That's why he was so thin.
Mm-hmm.
So, he wouldn't eat. We'd make sure we'd get him some food and things like that. So we didn't know on the tour that was going to be a problem. And then when we got off the tour, within a couple of months, he went to the doctor, and then they diagnosed him, and then he was doing the chemo and all that stuff. And we were like, wow. And we were supposed to go out in the summer, and it's only 6 months in between that. And, chemo was really wiping him out. So it was going to be, we were wondering if he going to do the tour or you're going to need more time, but we always believed that Ronnie was such a strong person that he'd get through this, So, we weren't on the road when he was really, I think that when you do the chemo thing, it really weakens you more than the actual disease for a while.
Mm-hmm.
So, then we got the news and we went, oh shit. So, and, but then he had to go in when he was doing the chemo. He went in and did some vocal overdubs on the live DVD, and he was worried that he couldn't do it, And he goes in, and he fucking goes in and he does it, and it sounds incredible. And we both look at each other, the engineer and I. Did he do it? I mean, that sounds great. Or is that on there already? So no, we did it. So that was cool. That gave him a lot of confidence,
At that time, did you guys know he wasn't coming back from it?
No, we thought he'd get through it. We thought he's doing the chemo, all that stuff, and then he'll recover and then he'll be all right. So we didn't know. Nobody, we didn't really know. I know he was doing treatments and stuff, and then later on, I got a call from Wendy saying, he went in the hospital. You better come see him. So I said, okay. And that's when it really took hold, and then a couple of days later he passed. So, but the interesting thing was the first time I went down and played with Sabbath on Sunset, and the SIR studios on Sunset, first song we played was Neon Nights. And we used it to open the show. We used it in the middle. We used it all over during those years. And the last song I played with Ronnie was Neon Nights, 35 years later or something. So it's a journey of a song,
Wow. That's an incredible couple of bookends there.
Yeah, it's like we start with one song and end with the same song. Amazing. And but throughout all that, he sang his ass off. It's like, Jesus. And we played loud. It was so loud on stage. It was stupid.
And recently, Ronnie's been brought back in hologram form.
Yeah. Yeah, I saw some of that, but it was hard to really see it the way it was filmed because it was somebody's cell phone, And so I don't know how I think it got mixed reviews, how it went over, Do
you foresee a time in the future when the Last in Line band will be performing at least a song or two with hologram Dio?
No, never.
Never? Okay.
No, the good thing with the Last in Line, we got together just for fun, me, Jimmy, and Viv, and started playing the stuff. We had a good time. Next time we did it, I invited Andy Freeman down. He sang some of the songs, and it just blew us all away. We went, wow. Hey, why don't we do some gigs? And we did some gigs. Then we got a record deal. And then the record deal, we wrote some great stuff. It's a really great album. And that established us as not only just playing, old Dio songs. We played 3 or 4 of the new album too. And everybody knows the songs. Great songs. So luckily that album did well. And we established ourselves as both of those entities, playing the old stuff and playing new stuff as a new band. And we continue to do that now. We just came off a tour with Saxon in Europe, and we did a bunch of dates ourselves in Europe, and it was fantastic, very successful. And then we go out end of March on the East Coast of the States, and then back to Europe for some big festivals. So we got to establish this. So we'll never do anything like that because, Andy sings the old stuff with his heart and soul the way Ronnie would be singing it. He doesn't sound like Ronnie. He sounds like himself, but the heart and soul's there, and Ronnie would be problem.
So let's talk real quick about Last in Line. Last in Line is getting ready to do a tour of the East Coast of the U.S. and then on to some large festival shows in Europe. You can get all the news of the band Last in Line, and this is Vinny. This is Vivian. These are the guys who were those original albums, Holy Diver and Last in Line, that influenced so many of us. You can find out more at lastinlineofficial.com.
Right.
With Vinny, he's very busy touring the world, and you look good. You look fit, by the way, so I'm glad to see you.
Yeah, I'm fit. I got a lovely fiance that makes me eat the right foods and keeps me very, very healthy. Sometimes I can't even identify what I'm eating. It's a vegetable. What is that? Oh, it's a whatever it is. Okay.
And I put it in my mouth?
Yeah. I mean, I just cut out the sugar and everything, and I go to the gym, and you got to because, it's grueling going on the road. The travel is crazy. We're not a major band traveling in Learjets. It's just like, a crazy tour, and you got to be fit and healthy, and we do. And originally we had Jimmy Bain in the band, and he passed in January on the Def Leppard rock cruise. He died on the boat before we got to play. So it was the three of us originally, which was a great band. And then Jimmy passed. So we took some time off, and we got Phil Sasson on bass, who played with Ozzy and good friend of ours. And it's worked out great. And we have a keyboard player, Eric Norlander, who's a great friend. And the band is really tight now. It's really an exceptional band. And we all love playing together. It's really cool. It's a very cool thing.
That's awesome. Well, keep taking care of yourself because we need you around for a couple more decades. Also, Vinny and his brother, Carmine Appice, are doing so do you guys call it the Appice brothers or Appice brothers, or it depends on who's saying it?
We're calling, now it used to be called Drum Wars. Now we're calling it the Appice Brothers because when we try to book things as Drum Wars, they think it's like a drum clinic or something. So we're calling it an evening with the Appice Brothers, and we do a show where we have a band. And we play 10 songs between us. Some of it's together, some of it's singular. And we do some drum duets. It's a great high energy show, and we were supposed to come down to Australia in February, but now it looks like it's postponed. So I don't know till when. But so we're doing that, and now we're doing our first album together. We never did a studio album together, and we're putting that together and hope to have that finished very soon. And we'll have some guest players on it, so some good friends and rock stars or whatever you want to say.
Oh, okay.
Call them. And so that'll be coming out too. And this is going to be cool because it's like, let's do an album together. I mean, it's me and you. We never did an album together. And it'll be some good songs and some cool things on it. So that's what we're planning. And so we're looking forward to that as well.
And folks can learn more about that at appicebrothers.com. Again, I'll put all these links in the episode guide so people can go directly. Have you ever taken a gig from your brother?
Well, if you talk to him, he says Black Sabbath wanted him first, but I know for sure they didn't.
You took the gig from him.
They would have had me in the Vanilla Fudge, but I was only 9. I couldn't get a passport or something. I don't know. Yeah,
you could make the fudge, but
I couldn't play in the bar. I was 9 years old, but then they said, we'll take Carmine. They wanted me to grow a mustache. I couldn't grow the mustache at 9, so it was. That was 2 problems. So he says Black Sabbath wanted him in the band. I said, that's only because he had a mustache, because Tony had a mustache, Geezer had a mustache back then.
Ooh.
So
Hey, I foresee
yeah,
Mustache Wars. That's the next version of
yeah,
the
mustache. That'll be the next show. Yeah, and then also put a link to the Rock Fantasy Camp. There's two of them
Oh
coming up.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, because that's cool, real cool, a cool thing. It's the first one's with Stone Temple Pilots and Alice in Chains, then the second one's with Deep Purple, and I'll be a counselor and musical director at both of those.
Hmm.
And those are very, very cool things, and you meet a lot of cool people and a lot of friends. And and also one quick thing: there's a company called ChromaCast,
Hmm.
and I we've designed new drum products for them, and that's out now too. Chromacast.com, and we got some cool snare bags and just drum bags that are very unique, and guitar bags, and it's designed by myself, my fiance, and the owner of the. My fiance plays drums too, and she's an artist, so we all know what we're doing here. So, and the owner of the company's a drummer, so we designed all these drum things. So those are coming out too.
By drummers for
Actually,
drummers.
they're on Walmart. We got on Walmart.
Really?
It's unbelievable. Yeah, my sticks. I got a bunch of sticks that a model of a stick that I actually signed every stick. At one point, there were 3,000 sticks laid out on the island in my kitchen. Not all at once, but a lot, 100 at once. And I would sign them. She would pack them. I would sign them. Everything's hand signed, and it's on Walmart. They're a 5B made by ChromaCast. So we got a lot of things happening with that.
No wonder your shoulder hurts.
Yeah, I know, right? So, man, this is. I think my fingers are hurting from signing some. Yeah,
So,
there's 3,000 drumsticks.
so as we end it here, let us know your favorite drummer joke.
Oh, gee, I don't. Uh, I like that joke that the kid says to his dad, "Dad, when I grow up, I want to be a musician." And the father said, "Son, you can only do one or the other, right? You can't be a musician and grow up, but you can grow up and not be a musician." So,
Very good. Hey, how do you get a drummer off your porch?
how?
Give him $10 for the pizza. There you
Or what does a stripper do with her asshole before she goes to work?
go. What?
Drops them off at band practice. You never heard that?
No, that's a good one.
Okay, that's because you're in Australia. That's like a big one over here.
Well,
Yeah.
what do you say to the drum? What do you say to a drummer in a three-piece suit?
What?
Will the defendant please rise? Uh, anyway,
That's
all right.
funny.
You can call Carmine and tell him that. All right, Vinny, thank you so much for spending time with us here on the Vinyl Guy. We do appreciate it, and we look forward to seeing and hearing about your continued adventures drumming with all sorts of great legendary bands all around the world. Thanks again. Say hi to everyone for us, and we do appreciate it.
Will do. Thank you. Nice talking to you, Nate, and everybody listening. Thank you for all the years of listening and the support. And it's just drumming. It's not a job. It's an adventure, you know? So the adventure continues. Thank you, guys. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, mate.